Until I hear the recording. Welcome to our question and answer with Shannon Liss-Riordan, candidate for Attorney General. We thank you so much for checking it out on our YouTube page and being considerate ahead of the endorsement for Attorney General. Shannon is the third candidate that we've had on. We've had Quentin Palfrey, Andrea Campbell, and Shannon comes to us to answer questions from the membership. So if you have any questions that you've submitted, we do hope that we get to them today. My name is Amanda Huggen-Moretti. I am from Our Revolution Greater Fall River affiliate, and happy to be with the candidates and our team. Welcome to Shannon. Hello, Shannon. We're so glad to have you here today, and we are very, very excited to hear back from you. As we're going along, just please keep in mind that Our Revolution is a volunteer organization. We're organizing a grassroots political revolution to challenge power and prioritize the needs of all people and our planet. We are building a statewide movement by fighting for economic, racial, social, sexual, gender, and environmental justice for all. So we are showing up for you, and we hope you're showing up with us. We can't educate people about our endorsed candidate or advocate on issues without your participation. So as we're running on volunteer efforts as ever, and the contributions of donors, please take a moment to make a donation or to get more involved if you have held back in the past. We are welcoming. Check the links in the chat that Henry has dropped there, and we're going to be moving right in. Today we have Henry Wardis of Our Revolution Arlington and Martha Carshare of Our Revolution Jamaica Plain, who will be asking the questions. And I'll just give a very brief biographical introduction, and then turn the floor over to Shannon so she can give us a 2-minute introduction, and then we'll go through questions. So thanks so much. So Shannon, she is the first Shannon Liss-Riordan's first job was with legendary feminist, civil rights leader, labor lawyer, and Congressman Bella Abzug, who inspired Shannon to go to law school and make concrete changes for others. After graduating from Harvard Law School, Shannon made a name for herself as one of the top plaintiff lawyers in the country, winning groundbreaking lawsuits on behalf of waitresses, truck drivers, firefighters, janitors, Uber drivers who have been denied overtime, minimum wage, and other wage protections. She argued and won 6 landmark cases in front of the Massachusetts Supreme Court, defeating Starbucks, FedEx, American Airlines, all on behalf of her clients. She took on companies like Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, and put money back in workers' pockets. Shannon lives in Brookline, Mass, with her husband Kevin, and their 3 dogs. Oh, excuse me, and their 3 children and the dog. So, pardon, Shannon. I turn the floor over to you for your intro. Thanks so much for being with us.
Okay, thank you so much, Amanda. It's so great to be here with you today. And I want to thank you all for what you're doing for educating the public and voters about the crucial issues that you advocate for. I'm really excited about this race for Attorney General because I have spent my entire career taking on the biggest challenges and delivering big results for regular people. I spent the last 23 years representing working people. I have made national headlines, taking on the largest corporations in America and leading teams of lawyers to victory. This work has put hundreds of millions of dollars back in the pockets of hardworking people, and I have changed corporate policies. I've changed industries across Massachusetts and across the country, essentially working as a private attorney general for the last 20 years. So I am very excited about this opportunity to take my work to the next level and continue and expand on this work on behalf of the people of Massachusetts. I see this race as a job interview. I really think that the biggest difference, I think, if you compare me to the other candidates, is please put my resume side by side with all the candidates in this race and ask yourself who you want to hire to be the next lawyer for the people. I'm the only candidate in this race who's an actual practicing lawyer. I'm the only one who has run a law firm. I'm the one who has won the jury trials, won the appeals, has used the law as a tool to improve people's lives. I'm very proud to have received just this past week the endorsement of the Massachusetts AFL-CIO. So we now have the support of 500,000 working people across Massachusetts behind this campaign. I would be honored to receive your endorsement. I look forward to our questions today, and thank you so much for letting me speak to you today.
So glad to have you here with us. Thank you again for coming. Martha, would you like to start off with the first question from our membership?
Sure, and welcome, Shannon. What are the main changes you would make from your predecessor to the Attorney General's role or priorities?
So I've been asked that a bunch. I want to say, I think Attorney General Marhealy has done a lot of great work. I think there are areas where we can do more to get money back into people's pockets more quickly. I know that sometimes it can take months, even years, for people who've had their wages stolen to see redress. I plan to set up a fund so that people who've had their wages stolen can get paid back right away, while the AG's office goes and pursues penalties from bad actor employers to fund this. I plan to do the same thing for environmental justice, make those corporations who are violating our rules pay, and set up a green bank fund, which we can use to fund clean energy projects and environmental justice projects. And also, finally, I will say, I know there has a civil rights lawyer for the last 20 years. I know there are plenty of times the state is not on the right side of the issues. I will take a hard look at every case that's in that office and make sure that taxpayer money is not being used to defend the indefensible. And when necessary, I will appoint a special attorney general to play the defense role. And in a number of cases, I expect I will take the side of the plaintiffs and make sure that our state agencies are following our laws, are protecting our civil rights of our residents, and are on the right side of the people.
Thank you so much. Henry has our next question.
Yeah, so thank you for being here, Shannon. What role do you feel the Attorney General's office has in oversight of local police departments? What role should the Attorney General's office have? And what can the Attorney General do to reform? Just relations with local police departments and oversight.
Sure. So, there's so much that needs to be done to overhaul our criminal justice system and make sure that we are not trying to prosecute our way out of the addiction crisis and prosecute mental health. As Attorney General, I plan to be a strong partner with progressive DAs across the state. I'm very proud to have been endorsed by DA David Sullivan, who I know is doing great work here to make sure that we are putting resources and getting help for the people who need it, who are suffering from addiction, who are suffering from mental health. And there's a lot that needs to be done to ensure transparency in our police departments. I've been working with the ACLU for the last couple of years on an important project to get transparency out of police departments. We have been doing public records requests to departments across the state, asking for things like racial data regarding the arrests and the incidents by the officers. And not surprisingly, not all the police departments are all that happy about sharing that information. So I'm about to file a lawsuit with the ACLU to make sure a department complies with our requests. So I think the Attorney General's office has a strong role to play as, from the bully pulpit for one thing, as a partner with the legislature to make sure we get criminal justice reform passed, and also working to ensure transparency among our police departments so that people can have visibility into what they're doing and how they are spending their resources.
Thank you. Please drop questions in the chat and we'll make sure they get incorporated into the questions that were provided ahead of this forum today. Martha, can you please share our next?
What can the AG do to reform or abolish civil asset forfeiture?
The laws regarding civil asset forfeiture in Massachusetts are just, it's just unbelievable that the state can take away your assets upon an arrest and not a conviction. I don't know how many states even have that system like we have here. So I would be an active partner with the legislature to reform our laws, because I think it should not be so simple for the state to take away our property. And I would use the bully pulpit of the Attorney General's office to work to fight that and get serious reform made.
Thank you. Henry.
So following up on my local police question, several cities in the state, Amherst, Cambridge, Lynn, Northampton, for instance, have moved or are in the process of moving most emergency response services out of the police departments. There's also a bill, the ACES bill, that would provide state funding for such transitions. Do you support these efforts as a means of increasing community health and safety? And do you also think that these efforts will reduce costs?
Absolutely, absolutely. It is so vital that we're getting help to people who need it and not be responding to mental health issues and addiction issues with a criminal prosecution lens. Many of the violent interactions that occur between police and residents is when police are sent in to respond to incidents that were really better served with a response from a health perspective, from a mental health perspective. We need to have more of these incidents being responded to not by armed police officers who we're going to be seeing more and more violence between police and residents if we don't reform this. So I'm absolutely in support of those communities that are moving resources that way, and I will be a champion to make sure that is happening in more parts of the Commonwealth.
Thank you. Martha?
Do you support a moratorium on the construction of new prisons? For instance, a proposal to build a new $52 million women's prison is under consideration. Do you think it should be built?
I do support a moratorium. I do not think that that is the best use of our dollars to be funding incarcerating more people. I'd like to see the money going instead toward getting people the help that they need, getting them the treatment for addiction, getting support to families and communities that will help them get on their feet, rather than growing a further growing an industry of prisons. I'm just concerned about that being the solution when really what people need help. There's more that I can say on that, but I know I've got 2 minutes on each. But I mean, I'll just say this also. I feel like the work that I've done through my career, getting money back in people's pockets, is really a key underpinning to supporting communities, making families more stable, and yes, deterring people from finding themselves in the criminal justice system, because I think it's when people don't have the resources that they need to support their families, to pay rent, to get food on the table, it leads people to desperate measures. So I think the work that I've been doing, the basic economic work, making sure people are getting paid fairly by their employers and getting the resources in their pockets that they need, is a very crucial element of fighting the system we have of just throwing too many people in prison for issues that could be prevented.
Thank you so much. And Shannon, I'll chime in and just say 20 seconds if you're getting close to that 2 minutes so we can hear a full answer so you don't have to worry.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Henry.
So regulatory processes shape how much information the public receives about the conditions incarcerated people face during confinement. How can you use existing policies to bring more transparencies to our prisons and jails? And what further transparency rules would you advocate for?
Yeah, as I said before, transparency is absolutely critical to what our law enforcement agencies are doing and what our prison system is doing. We know that there are horrific acts going on behind those walls. The Department of Corrections has not been forthcoming or transparent in letting us see what is happening there. And just like I have been working with the ACLU on opening up local police departments to showing their data on what really is going on there, I will take on the Department of Corrections and ensure that they are complying with the rules that are in place to make sure that we can see what's happening behind prison walls. And if there are aspects of the rules and regulations that are allowing them to hide behind those, I will work to get those changed. And this is the kind of work that I have been doing in my practice. I've seen how parties who do not want information to get released, I know how they can use the court system to try to do that. And in fact, I'm in this big battle that I've been in for years with IBM and a class action age discrimination case. They've been trying to get rid of older workers in order to build a younger workforce. I uncovered some pretty shocking information where chief executives, top executives at the company were exchanging emails referring to older workers as dino babies who needed to be made extinct. They did everything they could to keep that under seal, and I took them up on it. We went up on appeal and I won, and I got that on the front page of the Boston Globe just a couple months ago. It's also on the front page of the New York Times business section. So I have been an advocate for transparency. I think it is important for all of our state agencies, particularly for police departments and for the Department of Corrections. So I will take that same aggressive advocacy to make sure we can see what's going on there and change those practices.
Thank you. Martha?
Switching themes, do you support Medicare for all or single payer healthcare? And what role do you think the AG should play in the supervision or vigilance around the delivery of healthcare services?
Yes, I have long been a supporter of single payer healthcare and Medicare for all. So I staunchly support that. I know that we are getting closer here in Massachusetts to having health coverage for our residents, but we're not at 100%. We're only going to get there when we get Medicare for all. But we also have to make sure that services are available. What I'm particularly concerned about, and the AG plays a big role in, is mergers of healthcare corporations. The AG plays an important role in approving or not approving the concentration of power in the healthcare industry. And in any situation, I am very concerned when too much power gets concentrated in too few hands. And we're seeing that now in our healthcare industry. And that is a huge driver of costs for the public and for the state for reimbursement costs. So I will be an active champion of expanding community health centers across the state and make sure that care is available and accessible to everyone. And that means mental health care as well as physical care. I will champion efforts to make comprehensive mental health care available to everyone. That shouldn't just depend on what health care plan you have. And I will take very seriously the role of the Attorney General's office in ensuring we are getting services to people throughout the state, regardless of where they come from, the color of their skin, or the size of their bank account.
So much. Henry?
Yeah. Will you investigate and prosecute crimes committed in connection with illegal foreclosures? These are epidemic. And the current Attorney General has rejected criminal referrals in about 4 dozen such cases and has never prosecuted a single one. What's your plan?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, when we're talking about criminal prosecution, I got a lot of ideas about who we really should be directing our criminal prosecution efforts against. Repeat wage violators. Massachusetts the AG's office has the ability to pursue criminal prosecutions there. Massachusetts is one of the only states that has the ability to pursue criminal prosecutions for those who violate our environmental laws. And here as well in the foreclosure industry, I mean, this is a serious issue where people are losing their homes, and these are the kinds of cases that I've been taking on through my career. When I see systemic violations, discrimination, violations of our consumer protection laws, those are the kinds of cases that I've been leading teams of lawyers on for decades to make happen, and to aggressively use the power of our courts to hold bad actors accountable and change their practices. So I will absolutely I will absolutely use the power of the AG's office to prosecute anyone who is violating our foreclosure laws and pushing people out of their homes, and we'll use the courts to make a difference there.
Thank you. Martha?
Would you advocate for Massachusetts to codify housing as a human right and then use that codification as a way to hold the government of Massachusetts accountable if its housing policies cause displacement of vulnerable populations?
Yes, I do think that housing is and should be a human right. And I will use fully the power of the Attorney General's office to get to where we need to be to make sure people stay in their homes. I mean, right now there's so many causes of people not being able to stay in their homes. And, you know, one of the plans that I have been talking about is setting up an office of the tenant advocate at the AG's office, because you go into housing court right now and landlords have representation, but tenants don't. I want to make sure that tenants have representation. And I also want to make sure that there's more mediation services available to make sure that in these disputes between tenants and landlords, that these issues are being resolved so that housing courts are not just becoming mills for eviction. We need to keep people in their homes, and I'll do everything in my power as Attorney General to fight for that.
Thank you. Henry?
Yeah. Although renters are considered consumers, public housing residents are not, even if they work and do not receive a rental subsidy. Do you think this should be changed? And how about public housing residents who are disabled? On a fixed income, how can they be protected from sanitary code and fair housing violations?
Well, yes, I absolutely do think that that residents of public housing should have all the rights of tenants, and that our consumer protection laws should apply to them as well. It is outrageous if residents of public housing do not have the same protections to have basic housing that provides the shelter and the needs of their families. So yes, I think that's once again, this is the type of cause that I've championed through my career to make sure that regular people who do not have the resources are represented and have their concerns heard. And we need to make sure that we are taking care of people who are in public housing. That would be a priority for me.
Thank you. We have a question in the chat. Martha, Henry, do you mind if we share that?
No, go. I just pasted it into the questions, and Amanda, do you want to ask it?
Oh, if this is an okay time to pose it, absolutely.
Yeah.
So Samuel Pierce is just asking, Shannon, many people don't know their housing and legal rights. How would you use the AG's office to encourage community engagement and teach civics, since civics has been taken out of public schools? And I really love this question. I'm interested myself.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, because you know, there's something that I have really seen up close and firsthand. It's that, well, first of all, we've got some very strong laws and protections in Massachusetts protecting, you know, workers, tenants, consumers, but having the laws on the books is only the first step. Laws do not enforce themselves. You need to have aggressive champions who are willing to take issues forward, take them forward publicly. You need a strong attorney general at the helm who knows how to use our legal system to make sure that these laws and these protections get enforced. And beyond that, you also need to have a public who is educated about their rights. So I absolutely believe that it is an important, vital role of the Attorney General's office to be sure that people are educated about their rights in all areas. And I've been doing this through my career representing workers. You know, we've got these great worker protections on the books, and many a time workers have no idea that those protections are out there until they come and they see a lawyer, if they happen to be fortunate enough to find themselves in a place where they can get that kind of advice. But yeah, no, absolutely. The AG's office serves a very important role of not just enforcing our laws, but being engaged with communities and making sure that people know their rights that they can come forward on. I want to just mention to you a case that I filed this week that I think is a perfect example of how you need to have strong people stepping forward, knowledgeable about their rights in order to enforce our laws and our rights and to keep them alive. I was in Rome, Georgia earlier this week, standing with some very brave Black students and their families who took on, we filed a major civil rights federal lawsuit against a school district in Georgia, which was allowing incredibly racist behavior by white students. They were waving Confederate flags around campus. They were reenacting the murder of George Floyd. They were calling Black students unbelievably horrifically racist names. And the administration turned a blind eye, did nothing about it, even though they knew this was happening. And then when some Black students got together and decided to do a peaceful protest and wear Black Lives Matter shirts and shirts with the image of George Floyd without any writing on it, the school administrators told them they couldn't do that. And they shut it down, and they suspended the Black students who were organizing the protest, not the white students who were helping them organize the protests. Really shocking. So I was really proud to stand with those very brave students and their families. It got picked up nationwide this week, and I was on CNN Wednesday talking about that this happens. This should not be happening, but this happens in America today. And it's not just happening in Coosa, Georgia. It's happening around the country. It's happening in Massachusetts. I talked to a woman just last week who was telling me about the horrific racist disciplinary disparities that were happening at her son's schools. And what's important from cases like this that I filed this week is that bringing high profile cases like that educates people about their rights and encourages and opens the door for more people to stand up to protect their rights and to protect our basic values. So I think that's an important role that we can play in the Attorney General's office by bringing big high profile litigation like I've done throughout my career. That itself will educate both the public about their rights as well as corporations who will be deterred from engaging in their bad behavior if they know that that bad behavior will be answered and will be challenged.
Thank you. Martha, you have the next question for membership?
So my question is about campaign finance. And will you publicly renounce support and refuse funds from any political action committees funded by or representing companies and individuals that fuel and profit from climate change, or from large developers and real estate interests, or from healthcare industries like hospitals, pharmaceuticals, or medical technology companies?
Yes, I think that it's really shocking and scary how corporate money is influencing campaigns. I will not be beholden to anyone. I will not take any corporate money. And I have been proud to agree with Quentin Palfrey that we should sign a people's pledge in this campaign to keep corporate PAC money out of this campaign. I think it's a hugely risky endeavor to allow our candidates and our elected officials to be supported by corporate interests who would be regulated and prosecuted by the Attorney General's office, to allow that money to get into our campaigns, and this race in particular. I have spent my career standing up to corporate America. I sue corporations. I hold them accountable. I'm not going to take their money.
Thank you for that answer. Henry.
Yeah. Simple question. Should city and state law enforcement agencies cooperate with ICE in arresting and holding refugees seeking asylum?
No, absolutely not. Yes, no, our local police departments and authorities, they've got other things to be spending their time on. There's absolutely no place for them to be cooperating with ICE. I just find it so troubling that terrible situation that happened with a Superior Court judge who was arrested and is still dealing with the legal ramifications of having not allowed ICE to come into a courthouse and take custody of someone who was attending a court proceeding. I know this is something that we were seeing happening. We were seeing ICE's extremely aggressive tactics under the Trump administration. It has not completely gone away under our current administration, but their tactics are not quite what they were under Trump. But this is absolutely something that our local and state authorities have no business playing any role in. People need to feel safe. People need to feel safe coming to court. People need to feel safe. I am so proud of our legislature for getting through this years-long effort to allow undocumented people to have driver's licenses. It's going to make our roads safer. It's going to make it more possible for people to get to work and do their jobs and support their families.
Thank you very much. Martha, you have any question?
Yeah, another one of Samuel Pierce's questions. Recently, the Neponset River in Dorchester, Mattapan, and Milton was designated as an EPA Superfund site. How would you leverage the AG's office to be a champion for climate action?
Well, thank you for that question. Confronting climate change is one of the most pressing issues that's facing us. That is why I invited the other candidates in this race to join me in a conversation about climate change. And so we will be having a forum next Wednesday. I'm glad that they have both now agreed to join me in this forum so that we can spend an entire session talking specifically about our priorities and our plans for how we're going to be taking on the climate crisis. This is something that deserves more than just a sound bite in a forum like the one we're having today, where we're obviously covering a lot of issues. So first off, what I've been doing my whole career, holding corporations accountable, making sure they are following our laws and moving corporate policy and changing corporate behavior. That is what I'm going to do as Attorney General. I plan to be a leader among attorneys general across the country to make sure that we are enforcing our laws and regulations to getting to where we need to be and cutting emissions. So once again, laws don't enforce themselves. The legislature has now put forward our next generation roadmap, which is just the blueprint for how we're going to get there. But we actually need to get these rules and these laws enforced. I plan to take aggressive action using the criminal power of the Environmental Division, criminal enforcement power of the Environmental Division of the Attorney General's office to make sure that bad actor corporations who are trying to skirt these rules don't get away with it. And I'll take the penalties that will recover from that litigation. And I plan to set up a green bank, which can be used to fund clean energy projects and environmental justice projects, because what we absolutely need to do is figure out how to get to a point where our electrical grid is being powered by clean energy sources. We need to be investing in geothermal and offshore wind and solar power. So this isn't just a pipe dream we're talking about years from now. We need to be making the moves right now so that we're going to be on track to hopefully forestall the worst devastation that climate change may wreak on us if we don't take this seriously enough. And I will take this seriously.
Thank you, Shannon, and thank you to Samuel for the question. Henry, you have our next question. Unmute, Henry. You can start again.
Details. There's a striking difference in the amount of wealth held by white and black people in Massachusetts. Calculation a few years ago was $250,000 versus $8. Most individual wealth is in the form of a home. Do you see a means to address this in the near term? And does restitution play a role in your thinking on this question?
Yeah, so there are a lot of drivers to this disparity, and we need to be doing everything we can to make this right and undermine these disparate statistics and wealth. A major concern about home ownership for people of color is the actions of banks and what they have been, their practices with respect to mortgage applications. We know that there are discriminatory processes that they're using in determining who can apply and get approved for a mortgage. And once again, that's the kind of work that I've been doing through my whole career, is taking on discrimination, impact class action discrimination. And I would take on those banks. I would look into what are the practices that are leading them not to unlock the keys to home ownership for people of color because of these discriminatory practices. And again, that is the kind of work I've been doing. I've got this case right now, for example, against Uber. I've been suing them for misclassification of their drivers for years, but I also have a case against them right now for discrimination because of, there's data. They use this customer rating system, which my research shows has a statistically significant disparate impact on people of color and leads to Black and brown drivers getting fired at a much higher rate than white drivers. The same kinds of statistics. I've also used those kinds of statistics in fighting against the state for the hiring and promotion process it uses for firefighters and police officers across the state. I worked with experts to untangle the data and find that the civil service exams were having a hugely disparate impact on Black and brown applicants and firefighters and police officers. And my work led to the hiring of more Black and brown firefighters and police officers across the state. So I would use those same tactics to ensure that mortgages are being fairly accessed by people of color, and that we are putting in the resources that we need to encourage and help drive home ownership.
Excellent. Thank you. Martha.
Switching to education, the giant elephant in the room in K through 12 education in Massachusetts is how segregated it is. Our districts, by national standards, are tiny and reflect the redlining of the communities that they serve. How will your office use existing Massachusetts constitutional guarantees of a quality education to advance desegregation?
Yeah, this is an ongoing legacy that we still live with all of these decades after Brown versus Board of Education. We do still have highly segregated schools in Massachusetts, and that is a problem. I will use the power of the Attorney General's office to address that and make sure that we're getting resources to school districts that they need to make sure that they're able to educate our students. I'm a huge believer, I will say, in the public schools. I come from a family of public school teachers. My mother, my grandmother, my brother, cousins have all taught in the public schools. And so I'm a big champion of making sure that public resources are going to our public schools, not to charter schools, which would try to siphon away our public funds. By strengthening the schools, it's just really, I agree. I think as a result of this historic redlining, that's why we're seeing so much of this segregation. So we need to take action to combat that and to broaden the base of our public schools so that we are seeing diversity. I mean, it's a difficult challenge ahead of us with so many white students having fled the public schools, but I think we need to strengthen our public schools and make sure that we're putting all of our resources into them so that that's where families are going to, and we're making sure that high quality education is available for all of our children across Massachusetts.
Thank you. Henry. You.
Red states are trying to make access to gender affirming care or travel to a state like Massachusetts for gender affirming care a felony? Do you commit to making sure that the Attorney General's office doesn't cooperate with out-of-state investigations into healthcare and will refuse to extradite to states that ban gender affirming care? Would you also commit to providing free legal services to trans people and families who have fled to our state for gender affirming care? And I could add that the same set of questions could go to people seeking abortion.
Yes, and that is exactly what I was about to say. We're about to have unleashed upon us a whole new landscape of legal issues. Now that the U.S. Supreme Court, we know, is on the verge of overturning nearly 50 years of reproductive freedom, and we have states here, like in Massachusetts, we are very fortunate to have gotten the Roe Act passed, so abortion is protected here, and gender affirming care is something that we need to ensure is available here in Massachusetts to those who need it, as well as people who are going to be coming from out of state. There is going to be an onslaught of need around the country in red states for people who need abortion services, and it's already beginning that those red states, many of them have trigger laws. So as soon as Roe gets overturned, abortion is going to become illegal. And now what they're trying to do in those states is write these laws that would criminalize people crossing state lines to come into states like Massachusetts to receive that care. As Attorney General, I will not allow those other states to enforce their laws here in Massachusetts. I will make sure that Massachusetts is a safe place for anyone who needs abortion services, who needs gender affirming care, that they should be able to come here, and we need to increase resources because there's going to be a lot more demand. We need to make sure that there are providers who are able to take on this increased demand that we're going to be seeing. And there are other states as well, like New York and California, I know, that are making plans for how more services are going to be provided. In Massachusetts here, the legislature is talking about putting some funding into that. I think there needs to be a lot more funding to make sure that the services are actually available. And there are additional, although we have the Roe Act passed, we're far from doing everything that we need to do to ensure that people have access to abortion services here. There are bills pending in the legislature that I would champion to make sure that abortion medication is available on college campuses throughout Massachusetts, and to make sure that that people are actually able to get access to these services, not just that they're available, but that they get the funding that they need to access them. We're going to be seeing, like I said, a whole new legal landscape, one like that we haven't really seen since the Civil War, where we're going to have states in such diametrically opposite positions, and they're going to be trying to impose their views on other states as well. So we need an Attorney General who knows how to work aggressively, use the legal system creatively and aggressively to make sure that those states aren't able to reach into our state. And no matter what happens, God forbid the Congress turns over in the upcoming election, with the fall of Roe, Congress could pass a nationwide abortion ban. As your Massachusetts Attorney General, I don't care what Congress says, I don't care what the courts say, I would not enforce such a ban in Massachusetts.
Thank you. We're coming to the close of our time. Martha, Henry, we've covered a range of topics. Is there one more question that we can ask Shannon that we haven't covered yet?
I would like to ask the question about qualified immunity. Is there another one, Henry, that you wanted to ask?
No, go.
Okay. Qualified immunity is perceived as one obstacle to holding police and prosecutors accountable for violations of people's basic rights. How do you feel about ending qualified immunity for police and prosecutors? Are there additional measures that you support to ensure that the state cannot violate people's rights with impunity?
Yeah, so this is an issue that has been talked about a lot during this campaign. And let me just start out by saying, I understand that qualified immunity has been a huge impediment to people getting justice who have suffered abuse at the hands of police officers. I recognize that, and that is a problem. Qualified immunity in its current form needs to be reformed. And I understand these issues on a very technical legal level because I served as a law clerk for federal court judge for 2 years after law school, and I drafted decisions that related to the issue of qualified immunity. So I know how problematic this doctrine is. The problem with it is that basically the idea is that police officers are known to they're going to be in incidents, they're going to interact with the public. And it gives them some protection should they be in good faith trying to carry out their duties, so that any interaction that they have with the public doesn't automatically put them in front of a jury to decide whether what they did violated the law or not. It just provides them, the idea behind it is supposed to provide them some protection that if they're in good faith, following the law, following the rules, that they won't be subjected to individual liability. But the problem with qualified immunity is that the way the courts have approached it is just completely wrong, I think, and has led to it becoming a shield for police officers getting shielded from liability for particularly outrageous conduct. So the way the courts are supposed to approach qualified immunity is that when there is a case involving a challenge to a police officer's conduct, the court is first supposed to decide whether or not the conduct is legal or illegal, and then it is supposed to decide, well, was that clearly established before? And so the plaintiff can only proceed to a jury trial if the conduct that was violated was clearly established from earlier case law. But the problem is that the courts skip over that first step, and they just go straight to the question about whether it was clearly established, and thus they never create case law on what is allowed and what is not allowed. So my views on qualified immunity are the same as retired federal judge Nancy Gertner. What she has said about this doctrine is that it has not been implemented properly by the courts. So I support a reform of qualified immunity because I think it is vital that police officers understand their responsibilities and their obligations, and the public, that we understand our rights. And I am always in favor of having those rights and those responsibilities spelled out more clearly so that people understand what falls on what side of the line. So I advocate for, and I will as Attorney General advocate for, a reimagining of qualified immunity so it's not allowed to be used as it has been to block people from seeking justice who have suffered abuse at the hands of police.
Thank you. It's time to wrap up. Many thanks for addressing our questions, and we invite you to give us a 2-minute closing statement.
All right, well, thank you again so much for having me today. I really appreciate your questions, and I really appreciate the opportunity to have substantive discussions about the issues. I think that the Office of the Attorney General is an incredibly important office that touches on so many aspects of our lives. I'm really excited about the support that I've been getting as I've been going around traveling across Massachusetts, talking with folks about issues and so many more. And what I am hearing is that people understand this is a serious job for a serious lawyer. This is a job for a seasoned attorney who has taken on some of the most powerful interests in the country and has delivered for people. So, we can talk all day about our policies and, whether there are, shades of distinction here or there, but I think that my beliefs, which you've heard me talk about today and you can see in the questionnaire, I think are going to line up with what most of you have been fighting for in almost all, most if not all of these areas. But I think the question I ask you to consider when you're deciding who you're going to support for Attorney General is who is ready on day one to lead that office, who is going to be able to get things done, who has a history of delivering, getting things done. I've taken on the largest players in corporate America. I've made them change their practices. I've gotten hundreds of millions of dollars back in the pockets of working people. That is what I will continue, that important work as Attorney General, and I will use the success and the aggressiveness and the passion I've used in the field of workers' rights to help consumers, help our environment, help our reimagining and reshaping of our criminal justice system, and so many other areas. So I thank you again so much for having me. I would be humbled and honored to have the endorsement of our revolution. And for everyone who is watching this, who is going to the convention in a couple of weeks, I humbly ask for your vote there to help me get the 15% to make sure I make it onto the ballot in September. But more than that, I hope you join our campaign. Go to Shannon Forag, Shannon FORAG.com to learn more, to get involved, and thank you for all you're doing to educate folks about their rights and matters that really will make a difference to the future of our Commonwealth. So thank you.
Thank you once again for joining us, Shannon. Thanks to ORMA members for watching this on YouTube or clicking the link and watching it as they're considering their endorsement ballot. This is the third of our question and answer sessions. So now we'll be able to put this to our members and decide on an endorsement. So thank you. If we did not get to your question or a particular area of interest to you, we're very sorry for that today. We did our best to get all areas covered from the membership. Before we end, as long as we have the links for your big actions this week, please do consider the Action Network petition for protecting our public forests. Very important that we do that, and especially in this time of climate change, that we do all we can to protect the mature trees in our Commonwealth. Also, you are urged to look at that second link to strengthen public health in the state. We want to make sure that we're all educated on what we can do to make sure that vaccines and vaccination requirements are meeting the current policies. Also make the Democratic Party more democratic. Consider it. Take a look at that third link for that petition. And then, of course, signing up for the Fair Share ballot. We have a statewide effort to make sure that the Fair Share Amendment is strongly supported across the state in November. So please take a look at that initiative and get involved. We are so grateful for your participation, and we invite you to join us in any capacity that you like beyond watching. So thank you for being with us today, and we'll look forward to being again with you. Bring all of us together again soon. Bye-bye now.